Hey everybody, this is Sean Ventura with the Lights Camera Pro podcast and a very special guest today. It is Tia. Is it Fabi or Fabi?
It's Phoebe.
Fabi. Okay, I wanted to get it right. I always get names wrong. Tia Fabi. She is the head writer and the content manager at GVN, and we have collaborated a couple of times, and we had so much fun doing a review of the movie Ratched, the series Ratched on Netflix, that we decided to do Hubie Halloween today. And I'm just going to put up the poster with Adam Sandler and Kevin James and Julie Bowen and Ray Liotta and Maya Rudolph. It goes on and on. Steve Buscemi. There's so many stars in this. But it is... we are going to have spoilers. So if you are not into spoilers... Tia watched it yesterday. We're going to talk about it. And I just want to say, because we were talking offline a little bit, and you can jump in anytime you want, Tia, but I just want to say that this is an Adam Sandler movie. This is a goofy Adam Sandler movie in the same vein as Happy Gilmore and, the Waterboy. He even has a stupid accent like the Waterboy. My girlfriend was like, I can't even understand what he's saying. But there's lots of
Oh yeah,
innuendos.
I always have subtitles on when I watch things, and thank God I did and I didn't expect that he was going to have some silly voice in this. I was like,
Right.
what is he doing? I mean, and I hate to cut you
Yeah,
off,
yeah.
but I think as we said beforehand, it's like I can't believe that he's still doing these sort of roles. Like I am not trying to be ageist at all, but it's like Adam, you're not a young man. Like,
No,
why are you
no. He's
doing
in
these
his
sort
like
of roles?
50s. And so Rob Schneider and Ray Liotta look really old. Oh my God. They look
Yeah.
super, super old. But I think it's just a goofy, stupid movie. Like literally, I was going through Netflix and I was like, okay, there's nothing on. Here's an Adam Sandler movie. I'm just going to play it. It's about Halloween, whatever. And it's like, oh, I grew up in Massachusetts. I know Salem. This is just mindless fun. And I've seen these critics just rip this movie apart and say it's awful and it's the worst Adam Sandler movie ever and 10 times worse than Grown Ups 2 and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, come on,
Oh no,
guys. You,
they are definitely hating because it's in the moment. Because I'm sorry, there is seldom few projects that are as bad as Grown Ups too.
I don't even remember watching the whole thing. I think I turned it off after 10 minutes. But this is just a fun movie. So I'm just going to say to you, Tia, how did you feel about, and I'm going to put you full screen here for a second. How did you feel about the movie in general before we break it down?
Okay, yeah. I mean, it was one of those things where the exciting part about Adam Sandler films is that they're always say like a reunion. Adam, like, listen, I wish I was a friend of Adam Sandler because you know that you're always going to work. He's always going to have you in his movies. So as soon as I saw Kevin James, Steve Buscemi, I
Right.
was like, oh look, there. So I mean, I don't think Hubie Halloween was in any way like harmful. It wasn't, say, unbearable. I am, dragging it a little here, but it was fine. There were some parts in, say, the middle of the movie that lulled a bit for me.
Yeah.
I felt like it could have been sped up, but I will say that it had a pretty decent ending. It kind of gave that little message, and I thought that was interesting. So, I mean, it was a Halloween movie to put on if you're bored and you want to be within the season of October, but you don't know what else to watch, and you're like, let me throw this on. It was fine. It was a fine movie, and as I said before, in no way worse than Grown Ups 2.
In no way worse than Grown Ups 2. I love that. I don't even remember watching Grown Ups
and
2.
and I have to say as well that I used to be, not that I dislike Adam Sandler per se, but I used to be a huge Adam Sandler fan. I mean, Happy Gilmore, Billy Madison. I
Hmm.
loved even I Now Pronounce You Chuck and Larry. I was
Yeah,
a
that was a
big
fun
fan of.
movie.
That was a fun movie. So it's
Yeah.
not like I've ever truly say disliked Adam Sandler. Oh my god, The Wedding Singer. I'm like thinking now of all of his good movies, but
Hmm.
as soon as he did say like Jack and Jill and Grown Ups 2, then I suddenly was like, you're just doing this for cash grab, which, I mean, listen, in today's economy, I'm not going to hate on anyone for doing cash grabs, but I wasn't interested necessarily in watching them.
All right, well, we're done. That's it. We're just going to wrap it up. We've talked about the movie. No, I'm kidding.
I was gonna say, like, you never seen this, it's like,
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. It's just like, okay, it was a mediocre movie. Let's all go home. Have a good day. All right, so I'm going to start with saying that his name is Hubie Boucher, which I think in the
no,
Waterboy movie.
I
Wait,
thought it was Hubie no, it was Hubert Sherbert because I wrote that as a
is
note.
it
It was
Hubert Sherbert?
no, it was Hubert Sherbert Dubois. His
Oh, it's
last name
Dubois.
was
You're right. I'm
Dubois.
mixing it up with Waterboy. Boucher was
Yeah.
Waterboy. Yeah.
Because it already is such like a touchstone of former Adam Sandler classic.
Right. I mean, the accent, you could barely understand what he was saying. It was really silly. But he's a delicatessen worker, works in Salem, Massachusetts. And if you, here, we'll just put up another poster here, or we'll put up him being chased by the local kids, which is ridiculous because at one point they throw bags of poop on fire at him, but you can see in this picture that they're all wearing Scream masks, and it's like really these kids are going to pick on a 50-year-old man, but it's silly, it's fun. So he works in this deli, and they play pranks on him. They throw stuff at him when he's in the bathroom, and they make the sheep's head talk. And he's a screamer. He's a big screamer, so he's constantly screaming and freaking out, and everybody's
Easily
playing.
excitable.
Yeah, and everybody's playing jokes on him. He has a new neighbor, it turns out, when he gets home, and it's Steve Buscemi, and Steve Buscemi's the next door neighbor, and he's like, listen, tomorrow night on Halloween, just don't come to my house. It's going to be all boarded up. If you hear screams, don't come by. It's like, okay, I mean, I love Steve Buscemi, but what is this character? I mean, did you think that he was going to be like, I mean, we have spoilers here, so a werewolf or some sort of monster, or did you think something else?
I mean, considering like the context of the movie, that's like a Halloween movie, and him saying, don't come to my house no matter what you hear, I knew that kind of something was going on. I mean, if you remember the beginning of the movie, which, by the way, was Ben Stiller reprising his role from Happy Gilmore? Remember in Happy Gilmore, Ben Stiller plays the orderly when
Yes.
yeah, and I felt like that was such a nod to that.
It
But
was. It was. And what you're talking about is there's a mental institution, and he goes in to give food to this patient, and then the patient escapes, and it's like this a mental patient escapes from. So there's a couple things going on. You've got the Steve Buscemi sort of mysterious neighbor. You've got the guy escaping from the mental institution, which we'll find out who he is later. But it's like all this spooky stuff is happening in
and I
Salem.
so thought that like Steve Buscemi was that guy, right? That's what I
Oh
thought
yeah,
that.
we thought he was the guy who escaped, right?
Yeah, but I love Steve Buscemi. Can I say that like
Yeah.
he doesn't get enough love, and people often kind of make fun of him for say his like appearances, and I'm like he is a solid actor.
Oh yeah.
I just think he's great. But of course, when he premieres in these Happy Madison productions, it's always as like the creep, right? What was the movie? I think Billy Madison, where it's like
Yeah.
he's the guy who's like putting on lipstick and crossing out people's names. So it's like you automatically when you see Steve Buscemi, you're like, okay, something's going on here. But did I know necessarily that he was going to say be a werewolf? No, but definitely something
Something was
spooky
up.
happening.
Yeah, something was definitely up. Okay,
You're right.
so Hubie lives with his mom, and we're going to go through the plot here a little bit as we review it and talk about it. He lives with his mom, and he goes home, and she's making him peanut butter and jelly sandwiches with the crust cut off. And she says to him that he keeps getting bullied by kids and adults, and he's got to stick up for himself. And it's totally ridiculous because Sandler's like 50 years old, but whatever, it's stupid. But it comes back later
Right.
why she keeps telling him that he's got to stick up for himself against these bullies. He's just never going to do that. So, do you have anything to say about the mom or the mental patient? Did they?
At first of all, I just thought that the mom was like say really precious. I mean, it just sounded so like what a mother would say, obviously to a younger child, like, "Hey, you gotta stick up for
Right,
yourself,"
to like
blah
a
blah.
teenager,
Like
right.
to a teenager, not fully a grown adult. But I just have to say that I really liked her. And as far as I said, like with the mental patient, I thought that that was Steve Buscemi's character. I did want to mention really quick. I don't know if we're getting to it, but what is up with that thermos? Like, what
Okay,
is
yeah, I totally glossed over the thermos. The thermos is totally ridiculous. At one point, he goes up into a tree and avoids a car. He obviously uses water at one point. It's just like a Swiss Army knife of thermoses with a million things in there, like a radio.
and he always has soup in it. And the thing is,
Yeah, like three kinds of soup, which is even
three
more
kinds
bizarre.
of soup. And the thing with like Adam Sandler movies is like they're bizarre enough, and then he always adds like this little thing, like, okay, you have this, it like the thermos in this movie, and then in what was it, Mr. Deeds, he has like the the foot and everything, and it's
Right,
like he
right, the
always like
weird
throws
club
in this like
foot,
little
right.
thing. It's like, Adam, why do you need these things? Like, why do you need to put these little
I
things in?
think honestly, I think he literally sits. He makes like a movie a year. He's like Woody Allen. He's making a movie every year, and he just sits around a table with 20 writers that get paid a lot of money. He's like, all right, each of you have to come up with two gags.
Yeah.
Five for me, five for Steve Buscemi, five for the Ray Liotta, and five for Shaq. Like I think that's just what they do, and then they just throw them into the script because it's like every minute, every 2 minutes, there's another gag, whether
Yeah.
it's innuendo or a sight gag or whatever. So Hubie goes to a local Halloween party
Hmm.
where he starts pouring out these kids beers and they're getting really upset with him. So some of the kids decide they're going to tell him that, and he's got his Halloween monitor sash on, like he's keeping the kids safe, and he's more annoying than anything else to these teenagers who just want to party. But they tell him that there's a little kid lost in the corn maze. There's a corn maze out behind the party at the high school or wherever it is. And so he goes into the corn maze, and then Mike from work, one of the kids who plays jokes on him, decides he's going to scare him. And then Noah Schnapp from Stranger Things, which I'll bring up a picture here. Noah Schnapp and the other actress's name is Paris. They're here with Adam Sandler in the cornfield. It's like a behind the scenes shot. He goes out to the cornfield with the somewhat girlfriend to find Hubie and tell him, hey man, this is a joke. They're all playing a joke on you. Nobody's out in the cornfield. But then they find Mike. And we see what happens with Mike. And do you want to talk about that, Tia? What happens with Mike?
Yeah, I mean, it was, first of all, I have to say, like with Noah Schnapp's character,
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad that they didn't make, say, like him kind of a little bit of a douche. I don't know if I can say that on
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, yeah.
But I'm glad that they kind of made it like really quickly where he was like, this guy is a guy that my mom went to like, school with, and clearly he's a little, say, off, but, really doesn't mean any sort of harm. And you have I guess if she's a senior or something like that, or maybe, I don't know, she's definitely a grade above like Noah Schnapp's character, and her, sitting there going, okay, let's go help this guy that everyone in the town knows. And
Right.
then you have and I'm sorry, what was the kid's name again? The one who dressed up like Freddie Mercury?
His name is Mike, and he works
Mike.
at the deli. Yeah.
I was surprised of how much of like a douche he was to
Mm,
Hubie, because he works with Hubie, and it's like I understand like pulling small pranks. At first, in my mind, I was just sitting there going, "Oh, that's kind of what coworkers do sometimes, right? You pull little pranks, especially if it's
right.
like Halloween." But I mean, he kind of was really being nasty to Hubie,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, does that is satisfy you as a teen to make fun of this adult? But then we see that now he's the one who's actually in trouble. He's pretty much crying wolf at this point.
Right.
And he's really in trouble. So I thought that was interesting. And also I was at that point saying, good, you should get that. Now, granted, it's a Netflix Halloween movie, so I didn't know how far they were going to take it. Like, were they actually going to kill anyone in this movie?
Right.
Was always kind of like, is is the movie going to cross that line? And we see later that it doesn't cross that line, but it very well could have. I didn't know
Hmm.
what direction it was going in at that point.
Yeah. So we should just say that Hubie comes along Mike, the friend from the coworker, and he gets pulled into the corn maze really quickly, like as if a ghost or someone's pulling him like 100 yards in a second. So that's kind of spooky and scary. Um, so yeah, we didn't really know where that was going to go. But Julie Bowen, who I'm going to bring up now, a picture of her, she is the love interest in the movie, and she is married to Kevin James, who is the sheriff. And I'm going to
Was married.
was
They
married to
divorced.
him. They're divorced.
Yeah.
Kevin James looks like a Muppet, and I think at one point people
They made
call him a
that.
Muppet because he's obviously bald and he's got some sort of wig on and he's got this big beard and he looks ridiculous and he's the bumbling sheriff. But he is the ex-husband of Julie Bowen, and Julie, her name is something like Violet Valentine, and
Tyler Valentine, yeah.
yeah, and Hubie's always nice to her, but he never thinks he has any chance with her, so he's just kind of
But
nice
she
to
was
her.
clearly like into him. Like that, I was surprised of how. I'm not gonna say they made her desperate, but they
Right,
certainly um, made her not. She wasn't subtle. She was not
right,
subtle at all about how much she obviously had a crush on Hubie, and it was kind of neat seeing them together because I keep going to Happy Gilmore, but it's probably one of my favorite Adam Sandler movies,
right.
and obviously we had a reunion because
They
she
were
was the
in
love
that, right.
interest as well there. So, but yeah, she was not subtle at all. Which you have to think like, how does she end up with a major tool like Kevin James' character? And he was a tool, which I mean,
Well, I
he
think
did
the only
well.
way I thought about it that it could actually be, I mean, obviously none of this is real, but you do think about these things like how could she possibly go out with Hubie because he can't even speak. But it's because both
I
of
want,
them were in. She's like, I have all these kids, and he's not going to want me. And he's like, oh, I talk funny, and everybody makes
I
fun
want
of
to
me,
see,
so she's not
I
going to
want
want
to see you try and imitate like the face.
the face of Hubie.
Yeah, he's like,
Oh, I can't even.
you should have worn a fake mustache for
Yeah, if I
this.
was like, oh, there's something shut up. It's like he's not. He's not. You can't. You need the subtitles. That's. I'm going to do that next time because we can't understand what he's saying. Like, oh, you kids, get out of there.
You need a translator at
Yeah,
that
you
point.
totally need a translator, like someone. Well, not with sign language, but you definitely need the subtitles. So, okay, so 5 seconds, like it's so fast. 5 seconds later, all of a sudden, after the corn maze is resolved, Hubie's at the drive-in. And this is just like you said, the lull here, this really weird scene. I'm going to bring up a picture of Maya Rudolph and Tim Meadows from Saturday Night Live. And he's got this weird costume where his head is in his hands and his head's cut off. And she's the bride of Frankenstein. But they're in a car and they're making fun of Hubie, who's sort of patrolling the parking lot of the drive-in with the scary movie, and then all of a sudden they decide to play a prank on him, saying that some kid is in the car and he needs help, and it's
Right.
like, did you think it was like the movie Christine, where the car started driving after him, but no one was in it?
I actually didn't make that connection, but it
Okay,
is. But certainly, once the lights turned on, I was like, "Oh, where is this going?"
where's the
Same.
driver? Yeah,
Yeah, but you know what? The main thing I thought. First of all, I really liked Maya Rudolph's costume, but Tim Meadows, as you said, his costume was very strange. That
yeah,
toupee, especially, was very frightening there. But
yeah,
it just kind of reminds those things like I don't live in a small town, right? So it's hard to imagine that like you have these adults. Like it's one thing like the kids, with these adults who are still like acting this way years after say high school, and they all still live in the same town, so they all grew up and they all know it,
hmm,
and then they're all still kind of making fun. And it's like something that I've always say disconnected in movies because I don't live in a small town. That's
right.
not how I live at all. But I was just kind of like, you got like I get the kids, but you guys are adults, like you and Ray Liotta. I mean, what is you didn't grow out of that?
Yeah, I think it's just literally they're like a caricature of themselves. They're a cartoon of themselves. They're just a vehicle to move him to the next scene and to keep having people root for um,
Hubie.
Hubie, you know. But it is very bizarre that everybody's really mean to Hubie, and it's a fine line of almost too mean. It's like, okay, this is a comedy, guys. Remember, this is like a little bit too mean. So they end up at this haunted house with Ray Liotta, and I don't have a picture of him, but I do have a picture of the poster, which I think he's on. Let's see. Yeah, he's in the clown wig in the poster there. And this is a really creepy scene. Like he's hitting on a 20-year-old girl. The guy's like 60 or 70. And even the girl says to him in the
Points it out.
movie, like, what are you doing? You really think you're going to go out with me? And he's like, oh, darn it. And then
Then
Hubie,
he gets very, and I'm sorry to interrupt,
yeah,
but then he
sure.
gets very like vindictive, like, oh well, I struck out on you, so I'm gonna take it out on him. Like spoken like a true creep.
Yeah, like a true jerk. It's like, hey, Ray, welcome back to the movies. You haven't been anything in 20 years. You're the creepy child hitting on a young girl, like a 20-year-old girl. But so Hubie's screaming through this whole movie, right? We haven't really gotten into that. People are scaring him all the time because he's easily scared. Ah, ah, and this is happening in the haunted house. He's being scared by people. And they're like, we're just doing this to raise money. We don't mean to scare you. It was pretty funny. Pretty funny scene. And then he ends up in a room with everyone, like Ray Liotta and the sheriff. And they find the mental patient who's actually Rob Schneider from
Right.
SNL and the Grown Up movies and Deuce Bigalow, Male Gigolo, and and Steve Buscemi are at the police station, so they couldn't have abducted the last person who was abducted. So now they're all thinking it's Hubie, and Hubie's like, "Uh-oh, I got to get out of here," and he runs over to the radio station. And do you want
Right.
to talk about what happens at the radio station?
Well,
Which is
first I have
one of
to
the
say,
funner scenes for me.
well, so I was going to say, before I think we started this, you asked me, you said, Tia, did you hate this movie? And it's like, no, I didn't hate it. And because there were genuinely funny scenes, like I thought it was hilarious when Keenan, played by Keenan, one of the
Yes.
other officers calls and says, like, yeah, I've had these guys here for like 45 minutes. They're just mental patients. One thinks that he's a werewolf and the other just pisses himself all the time. And I don't know, to me that was like genuinely funny, but
Yeah.
yeah, to me the highlight was him going to the radio station because the whole time you hear this, you assume it's a woman,
Mm-hmm.
Aurora, and she has this very sultry
Right.
voice, very great to listen to,
Yeah.
and it's Shaq.
It's
Um, I couldn't. I was like, that's funny. I'm gonna give that to them. That's hilarious. I couldn't help myself, and Shaq played it really well. Like Hubie's obviously shocked and astonished, and I felt like they made it funny without, say, like gagging it up and going
right.
too much. I thought it was hilarious to me. But to me, then the real hilarious moment was when Aurora, I guess we'll keep calling Shaq. I believe that's
Mm.
what they said in the subtitles.
Right.
But Aurora's girlfriend, wife, I'm not sure what
Right.
he was, comes in and she's like, "Hey, baby,"
Yeah, and she's got the
she's like,
manly voice. He's
she
got
got
the
the really,
woman's voice.
and then Phoebe's like, "I can't wait to hear your real voice." And she's like, "This is my real voice. What are you talking about?" And I was just like, "Oh my!" And then they have that scene where they make out with a sandwich.
Oh,
And
it's like I have to say this. It's like 101 Dalmatians, and they eat the sandwich until they kiss, and it's so disgustingly funny. It's really funny, but it's
no, it was,
disgusting.
it was
So
funny. And I don't know if you ever watched the cartoon series called Ventura Brothers or Venture Brothers.
Venture Brothers, yeah.
Yeah, did that woman sounded like a character on the show. They had like
Oh,
another like female character who had a very deep raspy voice
mm.
like that. So I was like wondering if that was the same actress, but I didn't look it up. I should have
Yeah,
beforehand. But
yeah.
yeah, to me that was the peak of this movie. That was the
It was
funniest
the funniest scene for me too, for sure.
and I didn't know Shaq was going to be in this. And he's a very amusing guy. He's very personable. So anytime he's in anything, it's like a treat pretty much.
Yeah, he's really funny in everything that he does. He's a jokester. So the second to last scene in the movie, we're at the radio station, and there's a phone call coming from within Hubie's house. So Hubie thinks the killer is in his house, and it's going to kidnap and kill his mom. So he goes running home, riding his bike super fast home, and he runs into the house, and his mom isn't there, and he's scared, and he goes into the backyard. And what happens in the backyard? You can talk about that scene.
Oh yeah, that became suddenly like sadistic because the whole thing had a bit of still an amusement to it the whole time, despite certain other things happening. But as soon as you walk in, first of all, as soon as he was like, "Mom, mom," and ran home, and I was like, "Oh my god, mom!" And then as soon as like at first there was one moment where it split, like right before he got in, where I was like, "It's the mom,"
Ah,
and and then and she says to him, "I always told you that you should stand up for yourself, but clearly you aren't. So it's my turn." And you go, and it's like all these makeshift like crosses and things.
yeah,
Obviously,
because they
she's
used to burn witches in Salem.
right, and I think they said that their great 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 grandmother was someone who was convicted of being a witch. So,
Yeah,
to me, I was like, oh, and again, it touches upon that where I said to myself, is this movie going to actually cross a line like that?
right,
You
and
know,
burn
is
people alive.
and not for nothing, I have to say, I was kind. This is going to sound bad. Anyone who is live listening, I guess, or listening
Right.
afterwards, I kind of rooted for her to do it because they were all being still such jerks. It
Yeah.
was like still like, and she even said, like, the one kid Mike called him puby, and she's like, even right now, like, you can't help yourself to
Right.
be this way. And that point then, once Hubie saves them and she gives them that stern talking to, they all kind of reveal of their own insecurities. And like, not to get like too serious or anything, but I was kind of picked on when I was a kid. And my mom, like, the one thing she said, she was like, there's some sort of jealousy there. And you think to yourself, like, well, they're picking on me. What are they jealous of? And it's like, well, they have their own insecurities and Hubie doesn't clearly have. Like, yes, he has a funny way of talking, and he still lives with his mom at the age of 50, and,
Right.
all this, but he's very kind to people. He's very helpful. And, they clearly don't have that in their lives.
Well, yeah, and it's really interesting because Adam Sandler has this way about him. Like, I don't think anybody else could play that part because as stupid as this movie was, and all the dumb jokes and all the innuendos and the goofiness, like in that moment, you're kind of like, oh my god, are they going to burn the people? And like you're kind of in it, and you're like, oh my god, are they going to turn this from like a goofy movie into a really sick
Like a
movie?
horror.
Like at the end, is this possible? And he kind of draws you in and gets you to be involved in the story, even though it's a stupid, silly story. So yeah, anybody who's
And that's how
picking on, sorry,
I was gonna say that's exactly how I felt, where it's like
yeah,
it's a silly movie the whole time, and then suddenly it's like has this amazing message where you're so enwrapped in it, and like I really was again, like, I know it sounds bad, but I was really on like the mom's side at some point. I was like, you know what, burn them.
yeah,
They
burn them all, burn everybody, these bastards. Yeah, no, because but I had experiences with bullies in schools and saw other people bullied, and I think that's the message, and it's kind of a good message that the people who are bullying have their own pain and their own problems, and not to excuse it at all, but
right.
they're as messed up as you are, but then Hubie doesn't fight back, and he uses his thermos at the very end to
I
save
love
everybody from the mother's match. She's about to light everybody on fire, and he squirts it out with his thermos, which is funny. But the
which
very
so wouldn't happen.
right, it could never happen, only in a movie. But the very last scene, now it's a year later, it's Halloween. Hubie's the hero. He's much cooler. He rides his bike, and the kids aren't throwing stuff at him anymore. They're saluting him. He gets home to start Halloween night, and he's with Violet, Julie Bowen's character, and her three kids. He's kind of the dad now, and they're all dressed up. One of them's dressed up as the sheriff, and one of them's dressed up as Ray Liotta or something. I can't remember exactly, but they're all dressed up as different characters.
One is dressed up as Steve
As
Buscemi,
Steve
which was
Buscemi with the werewolf. So I mean that's fun. That's a fun little ending, and then
always cute.
and then it's over.
Yeah.
So let's do a rating because we always do this. I'll let you go first. What would you give it 1 out of 10?
I would give it a 5. I never like being too harsh with my ratings. I'm sure that there are people who, as you said, it kind of got slammed by critics. And, if you really wanted, you could probably give it a lower rating. But I mean, there were some funny scenes. It had a nice little message at some point. It kind of wrapped up in a little bow. So it's certainly like even in the past like few weeks, I've watched much worse movies than
Right.
this. So, you know, it's an Adam Sandler movie. Besides, as I said before the show, besides like uncut gems, this is what you're getting from Adam Sandler lately. So if you're expecting anything else, then clearly you haven't watched an Adam Sandler movie in a while.
Right, right. Yeah, and that's what I said too. I said 7 out of 10 because you just have to know when you watch. It says Adam Sandler. He's in a goofy bicycle. Like you cannot come into this movie like it's up for an Academy Award. This is a jokey, one-off, mindless movie, and that's why I give it a 7 instead of a 5 or a 4 because I did laugh out loud a bunch of times. I mean, it was goofy and funny. But I'm just curious because Happy Gilmore, which is probably his best movie, because it was kind of like one of the first ones and you'd never really seen him do a movie. I think maybe he did one other movie before that. But what would you rate Happy Gilmore since that was a successful Adam Sandler movie?
Oh yeah, Happy Gilmore to me would definitely be say like either a 7 or an 8 out of 10.
Okay.
Now, while Happy Gilmore probably is like the one of his best, I would say personally my favorite is The Wedding Singer. Like if
Oh,
you
okay.
asked me to rate say The Wedding Singer, that'd be a 9 out of 10. That is so much fun. I love that every time it comes on. To me it's like a classic, and it's like at that point Adam had his like charm when it came to those silly roles.
And do you think that was partially because of Drew Barrymore? Because I love her also.
I think it was well. First of all, I love like I may have been born in 1990, but I love anything the 80s. So the fact that it takes place in the 80s and everyone has the wild hair, and I think I just like the storyline. Yeah, Drew Barrymore was in her like real where she was like really, sweet and cute, and she was playing like this very like role where I don't know where I'm going really with that, but she was good in that role. And then the guy who played a douche in that was just so fantastic as
Yeah.
a douche.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Good villain.
What would you say is your favorite Adam Sandler movie?
I would have to say this is going to sound really weird, but there was this movie Blended,
Hmm.
and it was with Drew Barrymore, and it's about two step families. Basically, two. She has three. She has two kids. He has three kids, and they can't do like she can't do the dad part and he can't do the mom part at all. Like his girls are they all have box cuts. He actually has one of his daughter's names is Espin, like ESPN. And and the mom was a Hooters waitress and she died of cancer. So he takes Drew Barrymore on her first date to Hooters and she's like, "What is this? What our first date?" But they end up because Drew Barrymore's friend was dating the guy who ran Home Depot. Long story, they both end up in Africa on this free cruise, and their two families hang out together, and they become like, they fall in love and this whole thing. But I've been divorced and had that type of situation before, and so I kind of related to it, and I thought they both did a great job, and it was a fun script. So I would say Blended is my favorite movie of his. but it's only because I relate to that so well with having dating someone who has kids or whatever stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
but Happy Gilmore was great. Um, he has Wedding Singer was great. He has so many great movies.
Billy Madison, as we talked about, and Now Pronounce You Chuck and Larry. I actually also very 50 First Dates with your
Yeah,
girl Mary
yeah,
Moore again in it. I liked Clicked or Click, I forget which one. That actually makes me cry, believe it or not. Like
yeah.
there are several
No,
scenes
that
in
was a good movie too. And then he actually did with James Brooks, who created The Simpsons and Broadcast News and won all these Academy Awards. Spanglish. He was in a movie called Spanglish, and it was kind
I
of a
didn't see that.
serious movie, but it was this famous Spanish actress who was kind of like the nanny housekeeper kind of thing, and he falls in love with her, and it was a really good. I mean, it was up. Something was up for an Academy Award with that
Yeah, I
movie,
could
like
have
the
sworn
script or something.
when that movie came out, it was definitely like the talk of the town, pretty much. I think with Adam Sandler, and I wanted to make this point earlier with say like seeing Rob Schneider in it, is that I think that like Adam and Rob got into a lot of trouble at some point, with their portrayals of, certain people in a very negative light. I mean, Rob Schneider has pretty much like portrayed every race that he has no
Yeah,
business
he has. You're right.
portraying. So I was very shocked to see him. I was like, I thought Rob Schneider was like, person non grata, and then he
Yeah,
like pops up, and I was like, ooh.
yeah. We thought he was out of the picture, but
Yeah.
this is a stupid story, and we'll just end it on this. Um, I know that when they did Grown Ups, the movie Grown Ups,
Hmm.
um, he bought all of Chris Rock and Schneider and all the main guys, Kevin James in the movie, that were his buddies that were in the movie. When the movie launched, it made tons of money or whatever, and he bought them each a Lamborghini and delivered it to their driveway because he was like,
Oh my
"Thanks,
god!
guys, we just made a ton of money, and I'm going to share it with you," because he's obviously the executive producer of all
Again, I
these
need to
movies.
get a friend like that. Grown
Yeah,
Ups one was good. Grown Ups one was really
yeah, it
good.
was pretty funny. It was pretty funny. All right, so that was fun. I mean, we
Yeah.
just needed some levity, right? We needed to like do a comedy because we've been doing these dark things, and who knows what we're going to do next time. But next time you pick, and we'll do it from you'll be the podcast host, and we'll figure all that out. But everybody, I hope you enjoyed this, and I did. And Tia, thanks so much for doing this.
Oh well, thank you, Sean. I've always now enjoyed these pods with you, and I can't wait for the next one.
Yeah, we have to do that one. We have to do one of those top tens too with your friend.
Yes, absolutely.
The
We do the top tens on Sunday, me and my friend Brittany, who's a very talented Twitch streamer. So make sure you check that out. But yeah, no, definitely we'll have to figure out a one where you can come on and we can just kind of like just have a lot of fun with it.
Right. And do you want to say any? I mean, you're from Geek Vibes Nation. Do you want to say anything about when your pods are on, or are they scheduled, or what do you want to say before we go?
Oh yeah. Well, again, the top 10 is we record every Sunday, but usually it goes out on Mondays. And we do try and post reviews when we can. And we have other affiliates such as They Call This a Movie, Gutting the Sacred Cow, your Lights Camera Pro, which is just we love having this community of podcasts that get released every week because who doesn't like good content?
Right. And you guys, it's very impressive. You guys you interview a lot of bigger stars, people who are in the Batman movies or the Marvel universe or even some of the other TV shows that are on right now.
I'll tell you right. First of all, right now as we speak, one of our associates, Ben, is doing an interview with Kyle Lauder. One of you just did an interview with Scott Atkins, so
Right.
everyone you check that out. And I don't want to jinx it, but I am trying to get an interview with a pretty big actor right now. We're going back and forth, and their agent is seeing if they are available. And I'll give a little hint that he is in an upcoming James Gunn movie. So I'm pretty.
Okay. Very, very cool. All right, Tia, this was awesome. Always fun. And I will see you next time. We will see everyone out there next time. Thanks for stopping by. Bye
Bye.
bye.